If you've been around long enough, you've probably encountered this image, the Great Wave off Kanagawa, by Japanese artist Katsushika Hokusai. From its humble origins in 1831, it has since gone on to become one of the most reproduced paintings in history. Few other works have managed to captivate our attention with such striking elegance and power. Due to how closely intertwined Japanese culture is with such events, many onlookers over the years have assumed that the Great Wave is depicting a tsunami. However, modern research suggests that Hokusai's illustration may actually feature something entirely different, a phenomenon which, in some regards, is even more terrifying, one which we have only just begun to understand. It would seem that mankind has always had a complex relationship with the sea. For millennia, it was perhaps the single biggest obstruction standing in the way of human progress. Today, we tend to think of the ocean as a conquered frontier, a stepping stone in the development of civilization that we overcame long ago. With that in mind, it's easy to lose sight of just how recently our apparent mastery of maritime travel was achieved. It's common knowledge that human beings now exist pretty much everywhere on the planet, but that wasn't always the case. For the first 90% of our existence, the ocean served as an impassable barrier, restricting us to the Eurasian landmass. It was only through the onset of Ice Age events when we could access new territory through temporary land bridges. Islands and especially remote places continued to elude us for millennia. The prospect of crossing deep water for long distances proved far too daunting until significant strides in watercraft could be made. It took until 5,000 years ago before the Caribbean islands saw their first inhabitants. Madagascar was reached just 2,500 years ago, and New Zealand only saw its first settlers within the last millennium. Even then, no one else on the planet had any idea that these places existed. Only after the advent of maritime trade routes did the true scope of civilization become known. By the 1500s, man would successfully circumnavigate the globe, allowing for the creation of the first comprehensive world maps. When it comes to old maps, it's interesting to watch them gradually start to become more accurate over time. But what's more interesting is a little detail which began to appear on many of them. During the Age of Discovery, it was common for some cartographers to include illustrations of sea monsters in the more vast stretches of ocean. As the number of transcontinental voyages increased, a few ships would never reach their destination. With no way of knowing what happened to them, our imaginations were left to run wild. And so, the ocean would earn its reputation as a place of great mystery and mythology. It was common for seafaring cultures to attribute the cruelty of the ocean to some kind of vengeful deity. The unknowable vastness of the sea sparked wild speculation of fantastical lands waiting to be discovered. The fabled island of Atlantis would captivate scholars for centuries as a utopian civilization which tragically sunk beneath the waves. Equally unverifiable was the lost continent of Mu, rumored to exist between Asia and the Americas. Others saw the ocean as home to monstrous beings beyond our comprehension, from the colossal ship-devouring Leviathan to the unsettling temptation of sirens, whose irresistible song will lure sailors to their doom. The sea continues to tempt us to this day. For as long as maritime trade has been logistically viable, the rich and powerful have gravitated towards the water's edge. In the modern day, waterfront property continues to reign supreme as the most desirable real estate on the planet. Despite the ocean's adversarial role in our history, we sure do love being near it. Perhaps it satisfies some latent desire to flirt with the uncontrollable. It seems like everyone wants to come to the water until all of a sudden, the water starts coming to us. As many in America have ventured closer to the coast, the Cascade Indians have migrated inland. Their ancestral wisdom warns of a terrible tragedy for those who fail to respect the power of the sea. The legend they follow is very much based on a real incident, the Cascadia tsunami of 1700, an event so destructive that its effects were observed more than 4,500 miles away in Japan. In recent times, a tsunami of comparable strength occurred in 2004 off the island of Sumatra, where a magnitude 9.2 earthquake triggered a wall of water up to 100 feet tall. Coastlines near the epicenter were inundated as far as 2.5 miles inland. Currently, it stands as the deadliest natural disaster of the 21st century, resulting in fatalities as far away as South Africa. For the modern world, it was a stark reminder of just how frightening the ocean can still be. Tsunamis are the most well-known of the extreme wave phenomena lurking out in the open water. The word tsunami is often used interchangeably with tidal wave, although this is a misnomer. While there's no concrete definition for what a tidal wave actually is, the terminology most closely refers to a tidal bore, sizable waves which funnel into narrow tributaries. Unlike tsunamis, which are tectonic in origin, tidal bores are driven by rising tides resulting from the gravitational pull of the moon. And while bores are far less destructive overall, they still have the potential to be deadly. They are most common in waterways with powerful tidal flow, such as the Bay of Fundy, home to the highest tidal range on Earth. One of the most notable bores can be found on the Amazon River. Known by the locals as Pororoca, the strongest tides of the year create a seemingly never-ending wave, one which spawns at the edge of the Atlantic and travels hundreds of miles upstream. Fortunately, tides are predictable enough that they don't tend to cause much harm on their own. However, they become far more threatening when combined with another ocean phenomenon, storm surge, an effect produced when intense winds from a tropical cyclone push the sea inland. Depending on the direction of the wind, orientation of the coast, and strength of the tide, storm surge may produce devastating results. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina triggered a peak storm surge of 27 feet along the Gulf Coast. The widespread flooding would contribute to the costliest damage of any storm in U.S. history. The highest storm surge on record happened all the way back in 1899, when Cyclone Mahina struck Bathurst Bay, Australia. Considered among the most powerful storms to ever make landfall, it summoned an astounding 43-foot-tall surge. The scope of the disaster became clear when survivors later discovered numerous sharks and dolphins stranded miles inland. Had it occurred in a more populated area, the results could have been catastrophic. Storm surge, along with tidal bores and tsunamis, are commonly regarded as the most hazardous nautical events. These three phenomena contribute to by far the greatest quantity of oceanic casualties. However, far out in the distant sea lies a fourth phenomenon, one which is potentially more deadly than all the others. In 1826, French explorer Jules d'Urville presented an eyewitness report of a series of waves he encountered in the Indian Ocean. Their estimated height was monumental, believed to be in excess of 100 feet. After hearing the testimony, the scientific community was highly skeptical. The understanding of physics at the time found it impossible for any wave to exceed even a third of the height that d'Urville had reported. The concept alone was treated as ludicrous. Colossal waves spawning way out in the open water that are magnitudes taller than all the others. It sounded like a fairy tale. And so, the matter was almost entirely ignored. That was until 169 years later, when the Dropner natural gas platform in the North Sea recorded something unusual. At approximately 3 p.m. on January 1st, the platform clocked a passing wave with a maximum height of 84 feet, more than twice as tall as the standard wave height in the surrounding area. The facility was equipped with state-of-the-art instruments, meaning that this time, the reliability of the reading was indisputable. All of a sudden, the idea of Jules d'Urville's colossal wave was no longer make-believe. The anomaly sparked widespread scientific interest. It fell completely outside of predictive models at the time, prompting a re-evaluation of entire fields of study. The phenomenon would come to be known as rogue waves, which would soon be recognized as the largest open water waves the Earth is capable of producing. Tsunamis, while formidable near the coast, behave quite differently over deep stretches of ocean. The only other waves that come close are certain kinds of breakers which occur near the shore. These waves are famous for attracting daredevil surfers looking to experience the ride of a lifetime. The most powerful breakers occur in places where the depth of the sea floor rises steeply, forcing the momentum of the water upward. This effect is most noticeable off the coast of Nazaré, Portugal, which sits at the receiving end of an enormous underwater canyon. It was there in 2020 where Sebastian Stutner set the record for the tallest wave ever surfed, overcoming an 86-foot behemoth. Spectacles like this offer us a rare reference point to understand the staggering scale of rogue waves. Stutner's record-setting wave was roughly equivalent in size to the Dropner wave. As far as breakers go, that's about as big as it gets, but when it comes to rogues, we're just getting started. In 2000, the British research vessel Discovery measured a 95-footer. 1 year later, a pair of Bahamian cruise ships encountered an estimated 98-footer, the tallest observed in the modern day. Historical reports contain testimony of even higher specimens. In 1933, the USS Ramapo triangulated the height of an alleged 112-foot wave, which is perhaps the tallest ever witnessed in open water. Combine the most powerful rogues with the amplifying effects of the coast, and you end up with what are truly the largest waves on the planet. These elusive titans are rarely ever witnessed. Their true scale has only ever been approximated from chance encounters with a select few lighthouses. In 1985, the Fastnet Lighthouse in Ireland was struck by a wave estimated to be in excess of 150 feet. In 1914, a lighthouse keeper at Trinidad Head, California observed one wave pull even with the top of the structure, 175 feet above sea level. Potentially the tallest wave on record flooded the Eagle Island Lighthouse in 1861. It was powerful enough to smash the window panes on the upper level. For this to be the case, the wave would have had to surmount the 87-foot tower as well as the 133-foot cliff underneath, culminating in an unthinkable 220-foot monster. But believe it or not, there's an even more infamous case of a suspected rogue wave striking a lighthouse. Followers of the macabre may be familiar with the unsolved mystery of the Flannan Isle lighthouse keepers, an incident concerning 3 watchmen who disappeared without a trace. Since it was first reported in 1900, the disappearance has sparked wild theories as to how a crew of seasoned veterans could meet such an unforeseen demise. Fascinatingly, the recent advancements in understanding rogue waves have provided a plausible solution to the now century-old mystery. Damage found on the western part of the island corroborates an encounter with a mammoth wave, which we now know to be possible. As it turns out, the study of rogue waves has inspired a re-evaluation of numerous other historical incidents, particularly in the forensic analysis of shipwrecks. In 1978, the MS München suffered a catastrophic failure resulting in the total loss of the ship and her crew. The German cargo vessel was considered state-of-the-art at the time, making its demise highly unusual. It took another 25 years until a rogue wave emerged as the most plausible cause of the tragedy. A similar conclusion would be reached about the sinking of the MV Derbyshire, the largest British vessel to ever be lost at sea. A closer review of various maritime logs revealed that rogue waves were quite a bit more common than originally thought. Across the 20th century, numerous voyages had reported run-ins with the phenomenon, including the ill-fated Lusitania. The surprising frequency of encounters raises the question of how it took so long for the matter to be investigated. It's a question which leads to a rather disturbing implication. It would seem that the reason rogue waves were rarely ever reported was due to how those who saw them almost never lived to tell the tale. With the power to capsize even our modern-day steel vessels, the wooden ships of old hardly stood a chance. Across the history of maritime travel, it's entirely possible that rogue waves may have been the most unsurvivable force that any sailor could encounter. They have likely contributed to countless fatalities that we may never be able to realize. The remarkable difficulty of documenting rogues presents a significant challenge in studying them. They occur so randomly and infrequently in the wild that scientists can sparsely measure them with any sort of reliability. Regardless, the potential risk that rogue waves pose to the shipping industry has maintained a vested interest that they are understood further. Currently, there are numerous theories as to the specific cause of the phenomenon. Some researchers believe the matter to be as simple as constructive interference. Others consider more complex dynamics at play. But until substantial strides in data collection can be achieved, it's unlikely that we will reach any sort of definitive conclusion. Rogue waves, at least for the time being, continue to be quite the enigma. The same could be said for the ocean as a whole. most of which remains vastly unexplored. After all this time, it still has the uncanny ability to make our imaginations run wild. Despite all of our progress towards mastering the sea, we are constantly reminded that it must not be underestimated. To this day, the ocean persists as a profoundly daunting domain. It stands as a defiant reminder of how much we have yet to understand. At any given moment, only a minuscule fraction of the sea falls within the watchful eyes of man. What lies beyond continues to prevail as one of the last great mysteries of the modern age. It's impossible to know just what else may be lurking out there, waiting to be discovered. The ocean is still full of surprises, some of which may have been hiding in plain sight all along.